To talk? Yeah. Hey, what's up, everyone? Welcome to volume, what are we on? 6 of Hot Thoughts. And so excited to dive into this with this group of people. And so the way we usually get to start out is as people gather. We know people watch it later on YouTube and later, but we want to wait for our people to gather to comment live and ask us questions. And so as we do that, why don't we just have a chance for each and every one of you? I know some people know you, but not everyone knows you. So Chad, why don't you start us off with introductions, and we'll go around the horn. And then once we get kind of our group, we'll dive into kind of our conversation and our wings for tonight.
Sweet. Yeah, I'm Chad McDaniel. I live in Denver, Colorado, or a suburb of Denver called Arvada, just outside of Denver. I'm the lead pastor at Arvada Covenant Church. It's a community of faith, about 700-ish people before all the shutdown. I don't know how you count now what we have. You know, if you do online and you multiply it by 4, we got like 4,000 people because my mom watches so many times. My mother loves my sermons, tells me about it. She's at least like 20 views a week. So yeah, I've got 4 kids. I think another passion of mine is I did not intentionally put the race medals behind me to be like, look at me, I'm a runner. But my wife and I promise. My wife and I love to run, and we run with Team World Vision to run so that kids can have clean water and lives can be changed all around the world. So that's kind of me.
Cool. Lydia, what about you?
Well, I'm not a runner. I will admit that. And I just did 2 miles yesterday. It was a real big feat. So there's that. I am pastoring at a Foursquare church outside of Portland, Oregon, and I've been here for 5 years. And I have been pastoring for about 10 years now, all in the Foursquare denomination, and went to George Fox Evangelical Seminary, graduated from there with my seminary degree about 5 years ago, and also have been helping teach a class at George Fox at the undergrad. And yeah, I love what I do. I love who I do it with. We have an amazing team. I've been just super blessed to be doing ministry. And I have a husband that I've been married to for 9 years, and was Danny's roommate for a couple of years. That's how we met. And 1 son. So that's a little bit about me. Yeah,
I was your husband's roommate, not your roommate.
Is that what I said? Did I say you were my roommate?
It sounded like you said that, but I mean, Olu, what about you?
Well, Danny, thanks for having me on. Olu Brown, live in Atlanta, Georgia. So here on the East Coast side, things are going very well. We planted a church about 13 years ago called Impact Church, and it's in the metro Atlanta area. And we've had a great time. Of course, COVID-19 has changed up everything. And so one of our taglines is doing church differently. And we're literally having to do church differently. And so blessed to be here, blessed to be a part of this conversation. And I've got my chips I'm substituting for my wings. I love wings, but I got chips and dip tonight.
I love it. I also love wings, but after I found out 6 straight weeks of wings once a week, I was pretty close to like switching to something else. I've had like way too many wings over the last several weeks. So well, with that, we're going to kind of dive in. And so what we do is we take a bite of whatever we got. And so why don't we actually? So I always start off with sriracha. Big sriracha fan, one of my favorites. And so I'm going to be diving into sriracha. Chad, what do you got for sauce? Do you have anything special?
So I tried. I got 4 things that were like in the local aisle at the grocery store. So I got some local Colorado from Boulder, from different places in Golden, and so I'm going to start off with the green jalapeno and lime pepper sauce right here. The green jalapeno and lime pepper sauce. So hopefully it's okay one to start with. We'll see.
It sounds like you're going all in quick. Lydia, what do you got?
Well, I'm not that cool. I feel like being in Portland, I should have gone more local because that's what we do here. But I just went to Buffalo Wild Wings and I got the hottest, like, I guess one of the hotter ones. So it's called hot barbecue sauce. Really exciting on Buffalo Wild Wings. So we'll see how it goes.
Perfect. And Olu?
I'm the lame person on the call or Zoom. I've got a mild, thick, and chunky. So I'm kind of mid-grade here.
I like it. All right. Well, how about we y'all take a bite, and as you take a bite, I'll introduce the question. And so here is just the question to kick us off, which is this: kind of, we know that the world has changed. Actually, all you guys talked about that. Due to COVID-19, there's been a ton of things that have shifted. Church doesn't look the same. Business doesn't look the same. Like life doesn't look the same. And so, just kind of wondering for you, what are the recent changes have been the hardest for you to like handle, give up, transition, shift? Just in this, there's probably something that you're mourning the loss of. And so maybe Lydia, we'll start with you. Like, what's been the hardest transition in this?
So I would say, without this sounding really strange, physical touch with like other, like hugging people, and eye contact. So I didn't realize how much I depended on that to express like my presence with people, and God's love and just ministering to other people until that was taken away. And so I have felt that in a really deep way, actually. And like, there's been moments where I think I've realized, like, so if any of you have done like the 5 love languages by Gary Chapman, physical touch is like one of my lowest. So I wouldn't have anticipated that being something
that's interesting.
that was so, that I use so much, but like not being here on at the church on Sunday mornings, or those small groups, and just being able to, even my friends, because I didn't see them for quite some time and we're kind of phasing back into that. There's even this awkwardness of like, oh, are we hugging now? Or like, when I see you, I want you to know that I'm fully present with you. And I'm here in this moment with you. And so that has been extremely hard for me to get used to or give up, and feeling a little bit like I almost have to ask for permission to like touch anyone now that's not like in my quarantine or in my immediate circle. And that I'm feeling the loss of that. And I'm feeling, I think, the repercussions of that. And that's been really challenging to do ministry and be a pastor. When you look at like Jesus, he was just so, right. He was known for being all in, and he would touch people that were the untouchables and being physically present. We're missing that now. And I'm missing that very much.
Yeah. Or no, yeah, I'm a definite like high fiver, and so this has been a weird world to like not just lose my high fiving. So, Olu, what about you? What's been hard to transition, kind of for you guys?
Yeah, for me, everything is decentralized, and so although we're a new church and used to being innovative and creative, there is some normalcy to things being centralized. I remember in the first few years of our church, we were in a public school. And so we were literally setting up and taking down every week. We were nomadic, we were pioneers. And then when we settled into a more permanent space, we kind of lost some of our pioneer spirit and became settlers. And as much as we talk about innovation and creativity, there was a routine that was predictable and that you can depend on. Now, there is no norm. Everything has gone away. So one of the things I miss is a certain part of our routine, and being able to depend on certain processes, certain people, and to know that if you show up at this time in this place, this is typically the outcome. And now everything has shifted and everything has changed. Another thing I miss is what it means to be in the room with leaders. We always believed in meeting off campus, being in community, but we were still similar. We were in a room. We may have been in a coffee shop or some bar or something like that. We were always in a room. And so now, you're in rooms across the city, and it's a little bit harder sometimes to make that emotional connection, particularly if you're trying to push through a decision or really lean heavy on a certain topic or something that you want to do as a team.
Yeah. How far, I know Atlanta's a much larger city. So how are you guys closer to getting back to like worship?
It depends on where you are. Of course, we're watching some of the statistics across the Southeast. We're shooting for mid-August. But if you imagine, we have literally, with social distancing, cut our capacity to less than half. And so when we go back, you're in a situation where you have less than half the number of seats that you had just 5 months ago. It's crazy.
Right. Yeah. Well, Chad, what about you? You're in your Denver suburb. You're at church that's been around for a while that has tradition, has that. And what's been hard for you kind of transitioning, giving up, shifting within the context you kind of find yourself in?
Yeah, I think I always joke around, like I feed off the energy of people, like I write my sermons at Starbucks, and people are like, how are you not distracted? Don't you need to focus? And I just get the energy of people is the thing that helps kind of propel me forward and feel like, oh, and I'll talk about it sometimes in sermons, or like I'll look at Starbucks and look at people who are having a conversation and wonder what they're talking about, and imagine, like, what if that person came to my church this week? What would the message be like for them? And so much of this time has just been like, oh, I'm just in this kind of bubble, this vacuum. I don't know it's hard to know what people are thinking. You can't feed off of people's energy. I think maybe similar to what Olu was saying, that sense of when you're in a building together, and even if you're not necessarily always interacting with staff, to be able to walk down the hallway and say, hey, I've got an idea, and then start to see that energy in that process of people brainstorming an idea and going, oh, let's go grab so-and-so because we're going to need them to get this idea going, and then let's grab so-and-so, and you can't do that. And so there's a little bit of, one of the things that was really hard, especially in the beginning, one of the things that was really hard is my staff is tremendous, but everybody kind of ran in their own direction. Everybody kind of said, like, I really value team, and we're doing something together, and it's collaborative. And it wasn't anybody's fault, but because we couldn't be together, it was a sense of like, now children's ministry is running with an idea, student ministries is running with an idea, small group ministries is running with an idea. How do we help connect our senior adults? We have a lot of older folks in our church. How do we keep them connected? And people were scrambling and it was like everybody went their own way. And as the lead pastor was like, come back, but I can't call you back. There's nothing to call you back to. There was no, weekly part where we're sitting in a room together, can feed off of each other, go somewhere together. It was a lot of just scramble. Quickly, I would say another thing that because we have an older congregation, we did have a member pass away from COVID in the first couple of weeks of the shutdown. Yeah. And we weren't able to have that memorial service, weren't able to go and grieve with that member of our community. It's an older couple that were very involved. She would come every Monday. It was the husband that passed away, but the wife, she would come every Monday and do like our kids ministry bags and follow up with like guests and people. And it's just a family that's really connected, a couple really connected. And, we still haven't been able to celebrate his passing and celebrate his life and grieve. That's just been terrible. It's terrible.
Yeah. All the things are hard about this, but the loss of being able to, we all got into this because, we want to pastor people, right? And walked with them through the hard things, and to watch that fall away. And I'm not the pastor who even loves to do hospital visits, but I even know like losing some of those things that's hard to say, like, how do I get to walk alongside people when I physically can't be beside them? So it's hard to walk alongside someone when you're 6 feet away, right? And so trying to figure out how we do that. So we'll dive into our next question, which actually, Chad, I think you teed up really well. But before we do, we'll introduce another sauce if you've got one. So I actually should have done it in a different order. I have Frank's Red Hot, which is the least spicy sauce out there, but my wife loves it, and I was like, I'm going to give her a shout out and do that sauce. So, Olu, are you still on the same salsa, or do you have a different salsa?
Still on the same.
Oh, yeah, good. I like it. That's good. I'll ask you every question. I'll ask you every time. Lydia, what do you got?
I told you, man. I'm rocking the Buffalo Wild Wings the whole time. I'm not that cool.
Same flavor the whole time.
Same flavor. But here's the deal. It's not, I'm kind of embarrassed to say it's not that hot. Like, I was worried, like, I'm going to be sweating it out. I'm not at home. I'm at the office. Like, what if I need milk? But we're good. We're good.
I love it. Well, this is great, actually. I can stop asking what sauce we have per question. That actually, that saves me a little time. And then, Chad, what do you got for this one?
All right. So this one, I'm trying to ramp it up. I'm trying to go one up. But this one is the classic Valentina hot sauce.
Oh,
that I just like to douse like mac and cheese with. I like to douse. It's a little sweet, a little spicy. So this is number 2. It's a little spicier. That that green jalapeno lime wasn't actually that intense. So
Yeah.
this one should be a little bit more spicy. This is like,
Yeah.
we had an after school program at church I worked at, and the kids put this on like apples and goldfish crackers and everything. So that's when I
Yeah.
learned to love this stuff right here. Oh yeah. Don't knock it till you tried it.
It's pretty good. I would say hot sauce and even ketchup on mac and cheese, very controversial. Maybe we'll dedicate a hot thoughts episode to that. But as you take your bite, here's our question. And Chad, we'll start with you. So get that down. But what kind of opportunities have you seen to lead forward during this season? I know that like we named a lot of things that are hard, but we also know that we said this a few weeks ago on talking about the future of the church, that hurdles aren't necessarily a bad thing, but they're actually an ability to lead in new and kind of innovative ways. And so for each of you, just like how have you found opportunities to lead forward and specifically capitalize on those? Maybe not just thought experiments, but how have you really capitalized on those in this season? So Chad, what do you think?
Yeah, you mentioned our church is kind of like a legacy church in our denomination. We're about 57-year-old church. A lot of history of sending people into ministry, sending missionaries out. A former youth pastor went and started Alaska Christian College, which is like a 2-year Bible school, accredited Bible school for Alaska Natives. Phenomenal ministry. A lot of that, though, is 20 plus years ago. And so me coming to this church was a sense of, hey, we've got to start actually trying to reach our community. That's what we're trying to do. Prior to me coming, they had the worship wars. 25 years after the worship wars, everybody thought they were over, and my church managed to have them in like 2018 instead of 1995. So all that said, we were at a really, really tense moment before all of this. There's some of the harder months in ministry of my life, of my 15 full years of ministry. We're in January and February of this year. There's a lot of changes that were coming, that were happening in our church that need to happen so we can try to reach our community and so we can be more outward focused. And so it's really hard. The answer to the question, though, is this has given us in some ways an opportunity to say, what do we want to dream about? What is this thing going to look like when we come back? And if it just looks like if it's wash, rinse, repeat, we're going to get the same results we were getting before. We're going to have the same frustrations we were having before. And so it's really allowing us to think about small group ministries and discipleship in a different way. I mean, we're just a classic church that has a lot of people in Bible studies, a lot of people in small groups. But frankly, we don't always hear stories of life change as a result of those groups. And so they're good. People are studying the Bible, but there's not a lot of new people coming to Christ and not a lot of life change. And so we're starting to ask the question of, hey, this is a time when we come back to do it totally different and not to say back to normal. That's what everybody wants. We'll sing 4 songs that people, they hit the middle somewhere where people kind of like them and at a level that they can handle, but they don't really love anything we're doing, but they don't hate it. And, so we're really like, it's a weird time. So we're rethinking like, hey, when we get back in our worship space, it's got to look different. It's got to look different. It's got to be something that, I don't know, it's just different than anything we were doing before. Last thing I'll say about that, I read this, I love history, and I read this book called The Patient Ferment of the Early Church by Alan Kreider, and he looks at the church's growth in spite of persecution, in spite of pandemics, before Constantine took over. And I was just so compelled by reading it about how the church grew just because people's lives were transformed by Jesus, and they went out and lived differently in the community. And people were like, tell me about that. What is going on? And it wasn't the gimmicks. There was no gimmicks. There was no like, come to our big building, it's amazing. It was just people's lives were transformed by Jesus. And so in some ways it's like, get back to the basics, get back to some simpler things. We, I would say, had a real tension of some new happening mega churches kind of popping up in our area. I mean, we're just like a traditional white suburban area where it's like, hey, what's the best show in town is where people tend to go. And our show was kind of getting old, and so we're at a place where I think it gives us a great place to like, who are we going to be authentically when we come out of this? And so our staff has been really dreaming about, what niche, what space can Arvada Covenant hold? We have an amazing, tremendous reputation in the community because we've been here a long time. And so we're trying to figure out how do we lean into the best of our history and start to see lives change again, like we did 20 plus years ago.
No, that's cool. Thank you for sharing that. And Oli, you're on the other side, right? You're a newer church, moving into your second decade of ministry, or almost halfway through your second decade of ministry at Impact, but probably some of the same issues. But wondering for you, like, how have you tried to lead forward kind of during this season, and what have you capitalized on?
Yeah, great question. For us, it has really been around innovate now, change now. And so what does it mean to come out of COVID-19, but what does it also mean to transform? I've looked at some business models and talked to some people, and what I'm learning is most customers or congregants aren't necessarily upset for the business or the church or the organization not being fully prepared for COVID-19. You know, there are Fortune 50 companies who do disaster plans, and with all the money they paid, no consultant ever said this could happen. If so, they would have been laughed out of the building. And so no one is upset for us not being prepared. I think where people will be upset is if we don't change because of it. And the same accountability that is being held to a Fortune 50 company is also being held to a church that's in your neck of the woods. And I'm not sure as pastors and leaders, we fully understand that. So we're starting to change. We're starting to evolve now. And it's not easy. It's not easy for some of our team members. It's not easy for some of our volunteers. And it's also not easy for, you know, members of the congregation at large. But I think leadership is all about taking people to places sometimes they prefer not to go. And Dr. Samuel Chan, who wrote a wonderful book, Leadership Pain, said you can only lead to the threshold of your pain. And so at the point it becomes too painful, that's kind of the point you plateau as a leader. Yeah. So we've been pushing the pain and looking internally at things that we do, everything from how do we connect with new first-time guests? Now it's not new first-time guests face-to-face. It's how we connecting with new first-time guests online. How do we share generosity, offering, giving? How do we help people to know who we are? And one of the things that I'm learning is just because we say we're the church and our worship starts at a certain time, 50 years ago, that was good enough. 50 years later, people are saying, okay, why do you matter? And so even in COVID-19, we're having to tell people why we are different. We appreciate United Way. We appreciate Red Cross. We appreciate other for-profits. We even appreciate Amazon doing a video about how they're keeping their partners clean and safe and how they're helping to save the world. But we're also finding out that as a local church, we have to do some of the same to say, we're here and this is why we matter. And if you invest your time, your talents, and your treasure in us, this is the type of impact that we make. So we're looking at everything. And so we're capitalizing on, and I know this sounds crazy, we want to do less better. And we've discovered through COVID-19, there were some things that we invested in as related to programs, even people, processes that right now at this point we're questioning, was that the right investment? Because we've been able to do without it. And so now the hard part in the capitalization is when we restart, in a sense, face to face, to push back the human behavior and desire to just add on everything we stopped doing in the last few months. And so what does it mean now to be more focused, more streamlined, and to really be about the things that we know matter and that are changing lives for Jesus Christ?
Yeah, that's good. And I think like some ways we're almost like, I remember every church I've been in, we've talked about like the hypothetical reset button. Like what would we do if we could reset? Everyone got it now. And there's this opportunity kind of to go back to you, both of you kind of alluded to this, like a more, like it still looks like the church in 2020, but it's also in some ways a more direct connection to the ancient church because we're doing the things that people are doing because we're just connecting on a much more intimate level. And so, so Lydia, though, you're in Portland. You're in a church, different denomination, so it maybe looks differently. You also have a voice at the denominational level. So like, what are the ways you've been able to lead forward in either one of those spaces kind of during this season?
Yeah, so I mean, both these guys gave a lot of great insight, and so I'm not going to repeat some of the things that they said, because I think that absolutely they're alluding and talking about things that we are talking about as well. But what my kind of different spin, my different experience would be, I feel like in our church, and my personal experience as the associate pastor has been, we are really focusing on the individual in COVID. And so, not that we didn't have that touch before. On an average Sunday, we're about 850 people. But let's be honest, like, I think we all can get stuck in the rut of the program, and what is Sunday morning going to look like, and what is Wednesday night with youth group going to look like, and obviously it at first it was very stressful, because it was, oh my gosh, we have to go completely online now. Our environment, we have not been known to be a very tech savvy church. Not that we didn't have people that would like it, but that was not our focus. And so in the first month, there was like a stress, like, holy crap, like, we have to now completely steward to online for 5 generations. How are we going to do this?
Right.
And I'm sure many people felt that, but some people were already live recording and live streaming their services before this happened. So they didn't have maybe as much of a curveball. We didn't have any of that. We had an audio podcast. That's what we had. So,
right.
So anyways, so thinking about that, we've shifted our program, obviously, like we all have, but there's something that rings in my head over and over again that I have wanted to be my mantra as a pastor. And I heard it from my senior pastor when I was an intern, and then became on staff at the First Foursquare Church right out of college in Yakima, Washington. And the phrase was people over program. And I repeat that, that comes up in my life often. And I feel that heartbeat now more than ever in COVID. And I feel that for our church, and I love it. So some pastors are really struggling, and I totally understand that. And I want to admit, I'm an associate pastor and not a senior pastor. So I don't have the weight that senior pastors, I think, are carrying right now. And I'm slightly grateful. But as an associate pastor, my mantra has always been, I want to see the one who are the people, how can I individually bless and acknowledge and celebrate and lament and be there for the one, to where they feel like, you see me, and I'm not just a number, I'm not just a face, a body that walks through the door, or I'm not just a name on a screen that shows up on your online service. And so I've found, for me, really capitalizing on knowing people. This has been a test, I think, for a lot of pastors. Do you know your people? Because now that we're not in this format where you can just high five or give a hug or say hi, and that's good enough to check in with them when you see them on a Sunday morning, now, because you were relying on them to come to you. And now we're in a new reality where the hospitality, the care, the early church that you referred to, Danny, I think it was, or maybe it was Chad, that's where the early church thrived. And I think that is where I've found. So in this season, I've actually, when people ask me about this season as a pastor, I've actually feel like I've thrived through this season, because I'm able to do what I do best, which is love people and see them and care for them in a way that they need more than they probably have before, because of all of the crisis, because of all the change. So I think that that's been the capitalization that I have seen, and I've seen our team do as well. I mean, our kids, my husband's been a small group leader for the same kids for 5 years. He's grown with them from first grade. Now they're into 5th grade. And like, one of the things that we've done is like, how do we see the individual? How do we see the one? So we have sent them cards. We've dropped off Frisbees on their doorstep. We've, when it's their birthday, we've reached out to them, and we have focused so much on seeing them in a way that we didn't before, because we were so busy with program. And I think that impact has been it's so far reaching, and it's more than we will ever know or understand. And I think that's the longing of every human heart, is to really be known and to be seen and to be loved. And I think COVID has given us that opportunity, and I certainly have enjoyed it. And I have seen us capitalize on that as a team.
Yeah. I read a quote today that said, you can't walk alongside someone if you're trying to sprint them to the next step, right? And it sounds like what Kyle is doing and you're doing and the church, like it's being able to like slow down and actually walk alongside people, which is funny because we can't be with them, right? But there's this ability to walk alongside people in a way that maybe we forgot was necessary. And so so we'll dive into the next wing. Chad, I'm only going to ask you though, what's your sauce for this one?
I think I'm going to go with this. What is it? A smoked habanero roasted garlic.
I can dig it.
From Burns and McCoy here in Colorado. There you go.
I love it.
I've
got my favorite, the Ghost Reaper sauce. So this one's crazy hot. So, and as you guys take a bite, Lydia, we'll let you open this one up. But this question is more personal to me, which is this kind of: what one creative shift have you attempted to live into during the season? So, Olu, I love your comment, right? Like you lead to the threshold of your pain. And to be creative, you have to kind of push up to and maybe through that pain. And I would even say for me, like I wasn't doing hot thoughts before COVID. I started this as a way to connect with the 70% of people that aren't interested in churches that exist and to pour into pastors that are exhausted. And it's been fun to watch this community grow each week. But that was my creative shift. And so Lydia, kind of what's one thing you've attempted to live into? You kind of named how you've tried to leap forward, but what does that look like kind of creatively for you in the midst of your ministry?
Yeah. So I mean, the obvious one is we're all learning what it means to somehow create community virtually. And that has been a creative venture in many ways, and more than just, hey, here's a sermon, let me plop it online, right? But like, how do we actually connect and feel like you're my church, you're my family? And so that has been interesting. And I was thinking about this on even a more personal level, like not just from a ministry perspective, but like what has it been for me kind of living into this season creatively? My thing has been find something new every single day to do. So I get bored really easily, and I think a lot of pastors are probably wired that way.
Yeah.
And so for me in this season, I've been trying to think like, what's something new? Like I'm constantly, even more than before, finding new books to read, finding new podcasts to listen to. I'm finding new trails to walk. I'm finding new recipes to try. So I'm an Enneagram 3. I don't know if any of you know what that means, because I don't know. It's just
we're all pastors. You know, everyone here knows at least marginally what that means.
What's everyone's Enneagram number?
I'm an 8, so that's maybe not surprising.
You're an
but
8?
Yeah.
Okay.
Everyone I supervise tells me I'm an 8. So
okay.
I know about it. I'm not sure what mine is.
Okay.
We'll try to figure it out while we talk. I'm a 3 also.
Are you? Nice to meet you. So like I have, because of that, I have this like ridiculous need to feel like I'm achieving something, right? To feel affirmed. Like, what have I done? What do I have to show for my day or for the season? And being a mom and a full-time pastor, a mom of a 1-year-old, and it's been, in COVID has been challenging. So, I have this giant sticky note up in my, house permanently when you walk in, and it has all these different categories of different things that I've done or tried. So like number of puzzles that I've done 6 puzzles over COVID, all the different books that I've read, all the different new recipes that I've tried, how many miles I've walked, how many like different people that I've like gotten to know that I didn't know before. And so the sense of like, we're in a new season. And I guess with that comes some creativity of how can I pastor in a new way, and how can I be open to the Spirit of God in a new way, and recognizing that God wasn't surprised by COVID. Like he's not shocked. And so he knew this was coming, and he knew who would be pastoring in this moment.
Yeah.
And it's not an accident that I'm a pastor where I'm a pastor at during 2020. And so I take that as a challenge, and I take that as an opportunity to get creative, with our small group leaders, with the rest of our team, to go, so what is this going to look like? How's this going to be different in the future? So that's very broad, I guess, but that's been kind of sort of a personal side mixed with the ministry side.
That's good. And you didn't necessarily say this overtly, but like it sounded a lot like, and we missed this on the leadership side, right? But you're talking about the creativity of like reconstructing rhythms that help you lead better, right? Like you're doing things that are helping you be a better leader because you're reconstructing the rhythm of what you're doing, which is really cool. And I think if more leaders took that opportunity, we'd be in a different place.
Yeah, I think like one of you guys identified earlier, just this sense of like, okay, so we've lost our rhythm, right? Originally we lost this rhythm of like, we're meeting together with our staff and we're having these conversations on the side and we have our Sundays and we have our, things are so different now. And so you have to find your footing, right? And I think that, going into what is this month 3.5 now, which is crazy. And to think that at this point, at least where we're at, I don't see a realistic end in sight where things are never going to go back to the way they were. And so we have that opportunity, as you guys have mentioned, to look at things differently. And I think what I'm seeing though is some pastors are more burnt out and more tired than they've ever been because of the huge interruption and the switching to an online format and the fear of tithing and finances, the fear of their team and their staff. And so again, I feel like my thing has been, how do I keep my health and my sanity and my family together so that I can lead well? Because if I'm not taking care of me and I'm not taking care of my people and the people closest to me, and I'm just worried about the program and I'm going to fail. Like the season isn't going to go well. And so taking care of me, as selfish as that may sound originally, has been good and really great. And I think that's why this season has been good for me.
No, that's good. And I think pastors often ignore self-care, right? And that was something we were going to touch on later, but I think it's great to talk about, like, this is an important time to care for yourself. And so for you, Olu, I mean, what are you thinking? Like, what's kind of been one creative shift you've attempted to live into during the season?
Yeah, like Lydia, it's been a rhythm shift for me. And I know it sounds crazy that I've waited this long to do it, but it's been a work in progress. COVID-19 has just sped it up. And that is to shift from the mindset of being a player to a coach. And there have been seasons when I've tried to do both or had to do both, in particular as a church planner, but probably ran too long as a player and didn't shift my rhythm, my thought, my behavior to being a coach. So that's not always easy for me. So what does that look like? It means that I'm having to listen a lot more. I'm having to encourage others a lot more. I'm having to wait and be more patient because the speed of change or the speed of accuracy isn't necessarily the same for everyone or to my expectation, but also willing to step back as a coach and see something be executed. It might not be executed the way I would have executed it,
right? But
to be okay with that. And I know for some people who are naturally coaches, they're like, "Oh, Lou, that's a no-brainer," but it is really, it's really a shift for me. So one quick example, and and somebody would also say, "Oh, that's not creative." For me, it is very creative. It's very out of the box. But Rayshard Brooks, the young man who was killed last weekend here in Atlanta, Georgia, that location is less than a 5-minute drive from our church. And so that happened over the weekend, and we have our team meeting on Tuesday, and we started that team meeting with, how is it with your soul? And how are you feeling in light of what has happened here in Atlanta and what we're seeing happen in other parts of the country? And so everyone on that team shared just about, but I didn't interject. I didn't say anything because I realized the second I step out of my role and now become a player, not that I didn't have feelings or emotion, it would immediately take that conversation in a total different way. And so I was having to be a coach. I was having to be one who listened. And it was a blessing because it really allowed a safe space for our team to share without the lead pastor interjecting or saying how he felt or didn't feel, et cetera. And so I'm really having to challenge myself around this new creative part of my life of not being a player for every play, but learning to coach for a full game. And that's not easy.
Yeah, no, it's like the hardest part of the job, right? Is switching from, especially in the church planting realm, because you don't start a church without the proclivity in action for bias or bias for action. Yeah. So,
and I even know.
Go ahead.
I'll tell you, and it's crazy, you know, in the church planting world, like any other new start, at the beginning, tell us. And then you wake up one day and it's stop telling us. And it's hard because it was built on you having to make just about 100% of the decisions. And all of a sudden you can't do it anymore.
Yeah. Well, the cool thing is, because I know just being in your same denomination, like you're one of those kind of leading thought leaders to be able to push on new and innovative things. And the cool thing is to have your church have the Olu Brown DNA imprinted on them as you coach with a higher capacity, right? To have a staff full of not yous necessarily, but people that embody the same sort of ability to cast vision and lead well. And so, and probably the right next step for your church, right? That's the season of growth you're in, is to equip the future leaders of the church, which is cool.
Yeah.
So Chad, it probably looks way different for you. I mean, you're in such a different location than Lydia and Olu and even myself. And so what does it look like for you? Kind of what have you been trying to live into creatively this season?
Yeah, I think the initial thing that was hilarious for a church, 57-year-old church with quite a few older members, is that when we started live streaming and we were pre-recording, we pre-record our services and put them online, and let our church know, hey, you can give online. It was like we had saved the day for our people. Like, I can't even believe that you can do this. You can put it online. This is like blowing people's minds when we first did it. So,
you invented Venmo.
We did it, you guys. You can give online. It's amazing. It's an incredible thing. Although we still have some folks that demand that they drive their tithe check over and hand it to a person at church. That's the only holy way to give. So
that's in scripture. So, so that's probably right though. Like the whole technological shift has probably been a major thing for you guys in every facet.
Yeah, I will say this to this question. My team, my staff has probably taught me how to be creative in this. Yeah, we had the first Sunday that the world shut down, we had this kind of team meeting and just said, all right, y'all, what are we going to do? What are we going to do? What are the ideas we have? And it was just such a cool thing to see them. Our student ministries pastor is just killing it during this time. It's really like, this is lean. He's able to lean into his gifts with video editing and humor, taking things to students, meeting them at their homes and dropping stuff off in their driveways. So I would answer this question by saying I've been blown away by watching my staff's creativity and then just like leaning into it and kind of being that kind of coach and cheerleader, like, let's keep going. What's the next idea? Who's got the next cool thing we can do? We did a Easter in a box type thing where people could drive through the parking lot. There was some elements in a box that some like nice cookie, or no, actually it was a mason jar full of like make some muffins, since like usually we would have a really nicer donut type option on a Sunday morning for Easter. So we were able to do that, which was just a nice personal touch. We got to see people's faces. They felt really cared for. Did a similar thing on Mother's Day. Very creative things to kind of get in person with some people safely. For me personally, probably the most creative things we've done, we've kind of done these like Zoom-a-thon things. We've been really trying to be more outward focused as a church and be more community minded and really listen to our community and say, what are the needs? One of the local food banks was hurting. They were really hurting. They didn't have enough resources. So we did this like Zoom-a-thon, like the old school, like call in now and pledge your $50. And we ended up raising $16,000 for this.
Holy cow.
And it was like this like kind of variety show type thing. Like I zoomed in for a second. My associate pastor and youth pastor were the hosts, and like I zoomed in, and they're like, "What's Pastor Chad eating for dinner tonight?" And I did this whole bit where I had like pickles and peanut butter, and it was like a joke, and people were like, "Oh, if you want to see Pastor Chad eat," it was like old school youth ministry stuff meets like Saturday Night Live, and all for like a cause. And it was beautiful.
That's awesome.
It was so beautiful and so fun in the time when like, so there's just these like pretty creative, cool ways that like, I think Lydia, kind of what you said, like going to people, like figuring out how do we meet them where they're at, even in this time. Cause I'll be honest, like in the early weeks, I was pretty discouraged. I just, like I said, at the very first question, I feed off the energy of people. And when the first few weeks were just like stuck at home, I've got 4 kids. I love them all, but my wife and I are both trying to work at home, trying to do the online school. There was just days where it was like, I don't know what I'm supposed to be doing right now. And the 3,
right?
You talk about the 3, the achiever, I just felt so ineffective. And I was an athlete my whole life, so I'm so used to like achieving and winning, and that's how I get accolades from people. And so when it was like, yeah, I'm sitting at home.
Oh, you mean all
reading
those medals
a book,
on the wall, Chad?
like,
Yeah.
See what I've done?
Yeah.
I'm going the wrong way.
That's the most 3-wall
Anyway,
out there of all time.
Yes.
No, that's good, Chad. I think those are all. I love that you were my idol as a youth pastor when I first got into ministry back. I don't even know if you remember me, but we were both in the Northwest together, and I just remember Chad being like, "That's the guy that I want to be like." And to hear you doing eating pickles or whatever on a phone-a-thon, you still got it, man. You still got it. I love that. But okay, so this is kind of the point where we take other people's questions, and so I always appreciate just the ability to ask the audience, so to speak. And like I said, we have an interesting audience of pastors that are tired, pastors that want to be kind of poured into. We also have a group of people that are deeply churched, and then people that are like, the church kind of sucks, but I'll engage in spiritual conversations. And so we want to create space for all of them. And so, and we don't always get questions, but as I throw them out, we'll wait for them to gather. But we touched on this a second, but I would just like to know, and maybe Olu, we'll start with you. Just like in this, I didn't prep you guys with this question, so this one's off the cuff. But just how have you found rest? How have you slowed down? How have you found self-care during this? Because I think that is the most overlooked pastoral question. So how have you found rest during this season?
Yeah, we're in a pretty hustling and bustling metro area. So to go to a hospital, to go to a home, or to go to an appointment, it actually takes you 30 or 40 minutes one way. And you put that together, you're in a 2-hour journey for, an hour and all those together. So it has been rest for me to do more of this. So you're meeting and talking to people over the phone or over, video. And what I found is it just takes a lot of the travel time away. So instead of adding something to that travel time, I use it as a time to reflect, to reboot. And so managing my calendar different is one of the ways I've done it. I talk a lot about therapy and investing in that. And so in particular, when COVID started, I reached out to my therapist and said, hey, we need to check in a little bit more often. And so that has helped my mind to rest, because what we're discovering is, as pastors in particular, whether you're the lead pastor, associate pastor, or whatever the category, we're getting compounded bad news. And so you're hearing news about my family members infected with COVID. You're hearing the everyday news that happens. I lost my job. A family member had a heart attack. I have a child who is in jail. And so you put all of those things together and you're holding those for people. You can lose it in a lot of different ways. And so for me, rest is not only the physical, but it's the mental, it's the spiritual, and the emotional. So those are some of the ways. And I don't run enough to get the medals that you see, but I run a little bit. And so that helps.
Join the team, man. Team World Vision. Let's go. I got all kinds of swag here.
I think we need a team hot box.
I mean, I'll start that team right now. My wife and I, we woke up a week ago, and I don't know if this is self-care or not, but we were like, hey, my wife's like, what should we? she's like, what should we do today? And I was like, let's walk a marathon. And so we just walked a marathon, which was dumb, but also fun. We didn't run out of things to talk about for 7 hours. So that was fun. Lydia, what about you?
That's brutal, man.
Lydia, you touched a little bit on self-care, but what has self-care been like for you? You mentioned this kind of in passing, but I know this. I mean, you're a mother of a young kid. You're a pastor. You have all of this stuff going on, and that just adds busyness. I know, like, being a father of 2 kids has been hard to find self-care because I'm juggling that, and so I can't even imagine a newborn. And so, how have you been finding self-care kind of during this season?
Yeah, it has been interesting. Okay, firstly, I just want to say I'm really spoiled because I have my mom and dad who live 15 minutes away. And I know that is not a lot of people's story. And without them, I would go nuts. And I have an amazing tribe. Like, at first, I wasn't seeing my tribe, which was horrible. Right. But obviously now we're kind of like slowly, like, these are the people in our crew that we can be with. But it's intentional. I mean, had to be intentional before, when it wasn't COVID, to take care of yourself for any person, not just pastors.
Right.
But now it's even more so. And so I have found, like I mentioned earlier, my soul thrives off of experiencing something that I've never experienced before. And so what that looks like in this season is trying a new restaurant, or driving a different way, or finding a place that I've never hiked before. So, like, I went to a new wetlands preserve today. I'm going to a different one that I've never been to tomorrow. And, like, for whatever reason, like, I'm kind of a dork this way, that fills me. That fills my tank. And there's something about exploring the area. So I'm also a big travel person. So I've been really sad because we haven't been able to travel. We were supposed to go to Spain during COVID for a trip, just my husband and I was like, oh, this sucks. But I found, like, God opening my eyes up even more to, okay, you're here. What haven't you seen yet? What haven't you explored? What haven't you experienced? What movie have you not seen? What book have you not read? And I referred to that earlier, but it's real for me. For whatever reason, that is rest. That fills my tank. Yeah. And because sleep isn't an option. I mean, I'm not going to get more sleep with a 16-month-old. Like, you know, peace and quiet isn't an option. So what is it that is going to be where God kind of meets me and fills me and to overflow? And for whatever reason, it's experiencing something, or a place, or a taste, or a conversation that I've never had before.
That's good. Chad, what about you? What's been just quickly kind of like and I did get one question text to me, so I have one that I'll share, but ending on the self-care question, like, how have you kind of done self-care?
Yeah, I think I had a conversation with the person I would consider my mentor early on, who's also kind of an achiever and workaholic. In the 8 or 10 years we worked together, kind of knew that about each other. And he had a good word for me, just to say, like, to give me permission to say, like, everybody at this moment is experiencing the same thing. There is a slowdown everywhere. So give yourself permission to not, because at the very first, my first instinct in all of this was like, maybe I should write a book. Maybe I should start a podcast. Maybe I should start doing, like, daily devotional. It was like all the things I should probably get online and start doing, and start a YouTube channel and share my devotional thoughts. And so, you know, all the books that I wanted to read, and I've read some books, I've listened to some podcasts. I signed up for, like, some classes through Udemy that I haven't completed, because I signed up for all these things. And then to hear him say, like, hey, just slow down, slow down. It just was the permission I needed. And I mean, honestly, quickly, running is a thing that has kept me healthy and it just keeps me sane to be like, hey, I'm going to go out by myself, listen to some music or a podcast, and run. And it's kept me sane. So, yeah.
Thank you for sharing it. So the one I got, it said, so y'all, like, this is one area of leadership, like, or you think about pastors, right? And believe it or not, I know there's the elevation churches of 30, 40, whatever thousand people, right? But y'all are like in the upper percentile of the largest churches, whether you feel like you're crushing it or not. So the question was, like, leaders often talk about their strengths, but what are the weaknesses that you've had to really refine or lead into or delegate during this season to be able to lead well? And so I don't know who wants to start that one out, but maybe Olu, you got it.
I'll toss out 2 or 3. Being impatient, micromanaging, and really having to sit and listen to how people perceive me. And that can be a staff member, that can be a volunteer, and hear it and listen to it and make some course correction where necessary. And that's not easy. And so self-reflection has been one of my gaps, that I'm pretty much self-aware, but as it relates to being a leader in this space, haven't always been as self-aware as I've needed to be. And so growing out of that is, and the only way I can grow out of it is to ask people what they think and hear it and believe it.
Yeah.
Wow.
That's good. What about you, Chad? What's been kind of your thoughts on that?
Oh man, I think it's tough in the midst of all this. We've had to have some hard budget staffing conversations, and while I'm a 3 and I love strategic visioning and planning, I think my second Enneagram would be a 7, where I just like, if I can take the 3 hat off and just go have some fun and create some fun space for people, that would be my jam every day. And so I tend to not like to lean into those hard conversations. And yet most of them that we've had have turned out to be like, just fine. Oh, wow, look at that. Like, it's okay to lean into a hard conversation, and it's going to help the organization, help the mission and ministry move forward.
Right.
We're just, I don't know. I just tend to like put those things off and say, like, can't we all just have some fun and it's going to be okay. Right. And when like the reality is there and you have to have those conversations. So I think I'm still learning that. I love, Olu, that you mentioned Sam Chan's Leadership Pain book. Man, I read that back in January and it just hit me so hard. And so trying to be real vulnerable with myself, of like, okay, I'm anticipating these conversations, and I'm anticipating some things that I don't like that are changing and that I'm feeling. And I just have to be honest, like, that's actually happening. So yeah.
Lydia, what about you?
And there's so many ways I could answer this question. Okay, repeat it again.
Yeah, well, in a nutshell, it's just like, I mean, we talk about how we're awesome as leaders, but what are the areas that like you need to refine and work a little better at, your blind spots, your I mean, I'm a big strength finders nerd, and so like I'm like, here are my top 5 strengths, but I like never talk about the fact that I'm not strategic. And so like, what are the areas you need to work on a little more, maybe?
Oh, easy. I need to be more humble.
That's great.
No, really. So as an associate pastor, I'm not in charge.
Yeah.
And it's easy for me to like, I'm a 3, I'm a go-getter, get her done. I have ideas, I have things I want to do. And honestly, like it's a practice, it's a discipline to keep my mouth quiet. And to say, I'm not at the helm here. Yeah. And so even through COVID, it's like, yeah, like I have pride and ownership in the fact that like, yes, this is my church, this is my home, this is my family, this is, I work here, but I'm not number 1 and number 2. So like I'm in a unique situation where our senior pastors are married, husband and wife, co-lead pastors. So there's actually 2 at the top. And for me, like it is, I mean, I've been here 5 years now, and even the longer you're in a place, the more comfortable you get, and maybe a little too comfortable. And you think, and so I think for me, just the humility to say like, our pastors are 65 years old. Like they have some wisdom and some miles that I don't have as a 30-year-old. and to say, okay, like you're in charge, and not just through COVID, but like all the time. But I think that comes out even more in COVID when there's this sense of like, have we thought about this? Have we thought about that? Why don't we talk about this? Have you considered this? You know? And so I think just that humility to just say like that comes up more in crisis, to go, you know, I submit my leadership.
No, that's good. And I think that's a hard thing to navigate for not just associate pastors, but for everyone, right? To navigate humility. But
Yeah.
But your awesomeness is great, because you were able to send me texts to make sure that all of the grammar and spelling was right for all the posts I put out. So if people aren't as detail oriented as you, I would have had typos everywhere and everything I put out this week.
Love you, Danny. You're awesome.
No, sorry, I cut you off. You were gonna expand on that a little more.
I was just gonna say, as senior pastors, I don't know, how everyone's denomination works, but in Foursquare, like even if I were a senior pastor, like I would still have my denomination as a whole that I'm accountable to. I'd still have my district supervisor that I'm accountable to. So there's a sense of humility. I think about even with the race conversation that's happened in the last couple of weeks, and Foursquare, we're trying to make as a movement, we're trying to make statements, we're trying to put stuff out, and like I just think about my individual church that's just it. We're an individual church in our community, but we're part of a bigger family of denomination. And as a cabinet leader and a district council member, like I have some unique voice there, but in the end, like I'm trying to be humble and steward my voice. And that's a challenge.
Yeah, that's good. Well, we'll go into our last question and our last sauce. And before we go into it, Chad, this one's for you and me, but someone said they'll donate $20 to the charity of your choice if you chug your hottest sauce. Just to throw it out there, it's in your court. So, which I would say Brando, one of the best visitors of the show, he makes that comment almost every week, and he sticks to his word. He's donated to charities every time he said it. It's outstanding. But why don't you introduce your sauce? I've got the Constrictor. A jalapeno is like 5,000 Scoville units. This one is 2 million. So it's pretty hot. What do you got, Chad?
I got a ghost pepper. I don't even know what it's the extinction. It's got a dead guy on it. So let's see what happens.
Right.
That last one I had was way hotter than I thought it was going to be. Oh my gosh. I was glad I wasn't the first one talking, because I was sitting there like.
Well, you shouldn't have said that, because Chad, after you take this one, you'll be the first one to answer this question. We'll let you answer through the heat. But as we take a bite, I do want to have this be a place of encouragement for other leaders. And so how would you encourage leaders as they attempt to lead forward? Because I think the hard thing in this is not only I said y'all are leading some of the larger churches in the country, which is just a fact. Most churches average, Methodist churches, maybe Olu, you and I know this, but are like 50 or smaller, right? And so you're rocking the top of the Methodist world, but even in the Covenant, Chad, there's not a ton out there that are going mad and growing, and for the Foursquare as well, that's pretty big, right? And so you guys have a unique voice of leading in such unique ways, and maybe seen as rock stars in your own element. But what's your encouragement to the person leading a church of 50 that's just started a small business during this season, that is just a lay person trying to lead in their community? Like, what's your encouragement for leading? Actually, I am going to juke. You look like you might die, Chad. Olu, why don't you kick us off on this one?
Yeah, my encouragement is, and it's not only in Methodism, but the average size church in the United States of America is 75 people. And so we see a lot of different variations of church. One is don't become discouraged. And that's regardless of the size of your church. We're called to a context, and we have a unique voice. We have a unique audience. And it's like Lydia said earlier, it's reaching the one. And are you concerned about that one? The other is start where you are. In particular, as it relates to things around technology, in every level, there's always a next level. And so what the church of 50 wants to do, the church of 200 also has a desire. The church of 1,000 has a desire. So it's all relative. And it's about being authentic and starting where you are in your own context. one of the things we've seen with technology, in particular in light of COVID-19, is that people aren't looking for HD video that looks like something off of a newsstand or a news cast. They're really wanting you to be authentic. And you can be holding your cell phone in your hand and live streaming worship or sermon or whatever it is. But if you're fake, it's no good. It can be HD, it can be 4K, but if it's fake, they can read right through it. People are looking for heart-to-heart conversations. They're wanting to know, do you understand the stuff that they're going through? And do you really care? And if you do, hey, I'll accept you wherever and however you are. So my hope for you is that you would take the pressure off of yourself to perform, the pressure off of yourself to have the latest and the greatest. And this is any size church. And go for what it means to be authentic and to have a heart for Jesus Christ. And as Lydia said, to reach that one.
Yeah. Well, I would say from Steve, a person I've had an opportunity to be pastor, he said, in response to what you're saying, stay real, be aware of the person, how you relate to them, and just do what y'all are doing. So, which is a lot of what you're saying, Ulu. So, Chad, I see a tear in your eyes, so I'm going to let Lydia go next. Chad, you're going to go last. What do you got, Lydia?
Well, I guess the thing that I would encourage pastors, I mean, no matter your size, is look around you and ask yourself who's missing from the table, and do church as a team. Like, I don't care if you're a church of 50 or if you're a church of 2,000, team works. And it's a lot harder. I'm not gonna lie to you. Like, it's a lot easier to have the guy at the top who just makes all the decisions.
Right.
But it's a lot healthier, and I think you're gonna last longer, and you're gonna feel like you're doing more of the we thing if you have multiple voices around the table and you actually utilize those voices. Because there's a lot of churches say, oh yeah, we do church as a team, but they're not really utilizing the voices that are at the table. And they're not actually inviting them like in a way that's not, what's the word I'm looking for? Not dangerous, even, like where you feel like, oh, can I really say that? Can I really, right. They're not sharing the last 10% of the truth with the people, with their pastors or with their boss. And so I think like the encouragement would be, you don't have to do this on your own. And if you feel that way, if you feel that pressure, that's actually put on by yourself. And I really believe that. Right. You have the opportunity to bring people around you to actually have them be your peers and not your subordinates, and to not have you can break the hierarchy, especially if you're the senior pastor. Like you have that power in your hands to say, if I'm feeling like this is all on me, then there's something not right here. And I'm actually missing the gospel, because Jesus showed the way of we. And he showed the way of team, and he showed the way of breaking down hierarchy. And so I just feel like, I hope that's a challenge, but I also hope that's encouraging to you, because you can breathe a little easier to go, oh, wait, it's not just on me. Like, I have a group of people, we're going to walk through this together. And I can feel more confident in the decisions that we're making moving forward, because I have multiple voices that are being given space to speak into this or that, especially as we're in such an unprecedented time. Yeah,
that's good. That is good. And you think about like the leaders Jesus had around him, right? 12 oddballs and outcasts, the people you look at in the letters of the New Testament, like sometimes aren't even named, but are like the key leaders of the church, right? And like, you don't have to be just crushing it in a 3 or an 8 or a 9,000 on the Enneagram to be able to do great stuff, but just like, yeah, that's great. Chad, man, how you doing?
I'm good. I'm feeling like, as I'm watching myself, I'm like in a witness protection or ransom note video here, where like slowly it's gotten darker around me, and I'm crying now, and I'm good though.
It's gotten darker. I'm good. Both lighting wise and just emotionally in your space.
Yes.
So all right. Well, so what for you? Like, kind of, what's your encouragement? You're in a unique space, and a big guy in the Cov. Like, how are you encouraging those other Cov leaders to kind of do what they're doing?
I think a few things. Olu nailed it in some ways. I heard somebody say, I think before all of this, and it was at a time when there were some tense moments in our church, and I heard somebody say, it's the leader's job to stay encouraged. It's the leader's job, like, to stay encouraged. And it stuck with me. And the thing that stuck with me about that is you also can't fake that. You can't fake it. You can't be like, hey, I'll admit, like, I've been a high school football and baseball coach. I've been an athlete. I've done all the things. I can turn the like rah-rah on to do the like, hey, let's go everybody. It's going to be okay. But you can't fake that. Sooner or later, someone's going to go like, you're faking it. You're not okay. Somebody's got to speak the truth and say, guys, we're not okay. Everything's not okay. This isn't going the direction. And so just that vulnerability, the honesty, I love that Olu talked about reaching out to a therapist and just saying like, it's not okay. I had a dear friend of mine in ministry, reach out to me and we were talking. So I'd say, again, the importance of having a community of people when you talk about like the space that I'm kind of occupying in the covenant is reaching out to people and saying, just tell me how you're really doing. Tell me how you're really doing. Now, I don't want to see a nice Facebook post with a Bible verse. How are you really doing? And I had a friend reach out and he was like, man, I didn't know how to name it, but I'm depressed. This sucks, man. Yeah. I don't like this anymore. And then we were able to have an honest conversation of, so what are you doing about it? What are you actually doing with that? Do you have people you're talking to? Are you talking with your spouse about it? Are you leaning into other leaders? Are you able to say that to your church leadership team? Man, I'm depressed. Are you able to say, I'm wiped out, I'm exhausted, I need a break? So those are the things I think, like, it's a leader's job to stay encouraged, but don't fake that. Don't fake it. If you are discouraged, find help, find people who can rally around you that you can be honest with.
That's good. Well, hey, I want to thank just the three of you for taking these last 70 or so minutes just to chat a little about this. Leadership is a hard thing, and leading through hard times is even harder. And so I appreciate each of your perspectives on how to do that in the seats you sit and the denominations that you do it in, because even though there's some similar ecclesiology between our denominations, like, it looks different if you're in the Northwest or the South, if you're in Colorado or you're in suburban St. Louis like I am. Like, it just looks different, right? And so I appreciate you guys sharing that. For those that are tuning in, I just want to invite you to come back next week. Hot Thoughts doesn't stop. And so next week we're talking about kind of mission service and justice. We have Shane Claiborne, John Claude Lewis, Lucas Endicott, and Elizabeth Lee. We're going to be talking about just kind of mission, service, justice, all that kind of stuff here as we dive into that. And so just excited to keep the conversation going. But this will be the end for us tonight. Thank you three for tuning in, and we look forward to seeing everyone again next week.
Thanks, guys.